Hey guys, I hope that you're doing well. It's been a few days since I've posted anything, but it's been pretty busy around here, and I just didn't have time to sit down and cover, I think, the things that I really wanted to cover, but something has come through that I think is really important. And it keeps coming up with a lot of other different people. So I think it's time that I touch on it. And that is on the subject of being a catalyst. And then from that standpoint of being a catalyst, learning how to love people. Because that just keeps coming through with varying people in my life and throughout different conversations of late, especially today. And I myself am a catalyst. And so a catalyst is someone that triggers other people. That can come through the form of it being comfortable and just this really enlightening aha moment kind of experience. And sometimes it is, I guess I should say more often than not, through challenging other people, whether you mean to or not. And a lot of times we will find that those people and those situations are very unexpected. We don't expect those folks to come into our space, but they are drawn to us. And a lot of us are empathic, and I certainly am. And the other night I had a conversation with a loved one that really put something into focus. And I think that the way that she illustrated this to me finally made me realize a bit more of the impact that I have on other people. Because folks are so nice all the time, really routinely telling me how I've impacted their life. And I've always been so appreciative of that. But I've got to tell you, there's something inside of me that just feels like it's praise that is so far beyond what I deserve. And this kind of touches on a little bit of what I need to relate today, because that is my past trauma. That's the little child in me that experienced things where the messaging was very opposite of what I hear these days when people offer me love and praise. I have a hard time believing it, even though I know that they mean it. It just doesn't transpose in a way that feels comfortable. So I can still tend to have a hard time accepting praise or compliments, and I'm very gracious about it, and I thank them for loving me in that way. But there's a part of me that still inside says, well, that doesn't match with what we experienced growing up. So starting in with that, I have known my entire life that people were really either drawn to me in a really strong way. People all over the place. Even when I was a little girl, there would be grown folks in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s coming to me and telling me about their marital problems when I was 8, 10, 11 years old. So people have always felt comfortable with me for the most part, with the exception of those who seemed to be really, really triggered by me for no reason. It was as if they just, from the get-go, decided that they didn't like me, but it was a really strong reaction that just didn't make sense for the situation. And I understand that now. The impact that we have as a catalyst on other people in showing them, literally reflecting to them the things that they need to see and heal, is a pretty tough soul contract to take on. And you experience a lot of different things that can be quite challenging throughout your lifetime as a catalyst. And I certainly have experienced those incidents and then have had to deal with my feelings surrounding them. But we are a walking mirror in human form. And our energy frequency vibrates at a really, really high level. And so depending on where somebody's at, you can either make them feel incredibly comfortable and drawn to you and really wanting to stay in your space. Or there will be people that are just outright repelled because they have an immediate trauma reaction to what they feel around you. And maybe they can't pinpoint it, but there's trauma that's lurching up there and their reaction is to run from it or to be aggressive. And I've certainly experienced that with people too. Although more often than not, I have experienced a series of stalkers throughout my life, even from the point of being a child, including grown men that when I was 10 years old when I experienced my first grown male stalker. So I've been experiencing that throughout my life here and there. And people really tend to want to stay within my energy because they feel comfortable. And the other evening, in that talk with my loved one, they put it in such a manner that just kind of made it click. And they were saying that another person that met me just felt really safe and comfortable and comforted by the hug that I gave them. And I was just meeting them for the first time, but that they'd never felt that way before or received that before in that way. And then it all kind of clicked together with what other people have said to me. I've noticed that people will hug me and then hold on for a really long time. And then things start getting awkward. And I'm just trying not to be rude and, maybe give them a few pats and let go. But folks tend to feel so comfortable in my energy and comforted by me, even physically, that they want to stay within that space because it's a reprieve from the world. But also emotionally, a lot of times, whether I'm doing a session or whether I run into someone in the grocery store, like a stranger who wants to tell me the most random things, they will usually find any way to keep that conversation going because it feels so good to be in that kind of a vibration, like connecting with someone with that vibration. And, we all have our own energetic frequency that we're vibrating at. The more trauma, the more unhealed trauma that you have, you're probably going to vibrate on a lower level. But if you are empathic, even if you have a ton of trauma, you are a light worker. So you're vibrating at a pretty high level already, regardless of that trauma. And really, once you've dealt with a lot of your trauma, you just go higher and higher and higher as you continue to ascend. So my energy frequency is pretty high. If there is someone that has some really funky ass intentions and they genuinely are like a predatory type of energy and they are just super, super low level, like serial killer low level, they will be triggered and want nothing to do with me. Actually, they'll be repulsed. And there's actually an example that I have of that in my own life with that specific example. Maybe that's a story for another time. But by and large, people are drawn to me, strangers, babies, dogs, cats, animals of any kind. And folks want to kind of stay in that energy. And the thing is, I've dealt with tons of trauma throughout my life, and I've continued to work on those things, and I've learned so much about love and so much about what it is to be human and how dealing with our trauma really allows us to become more vulnerable and be more courageous and to be our authentic selves, because most people are walking around not as themselves, but in embodying the interface that they surround themselves with. So it's an encapsulation of all of their trauma that creates this safety buffer, or what they think is a safety buffer. But the problem is, while it may seem like it's protecting their heart, it doesn't allow anyone to get to know them. And since most folks are walking around with this shell around them, when they interact with people and when people interact with them, there isn't any true interaction between individuals. It's just trauma reacting with trauma. Literally, it's just those interfaces interacting with each other, which is where you get some really unhealthy dynamics, where trauma is what speaks. Trauma is what handles the decisions. Trauma is what makes those decisions in reference to whatever dynamic is going on between those people. It's not the actual person and what they genuinely would want or genuinely would express. It's trauma at the wheel, and usually on both sides. But it does incredibly influence the direction that you take in life, how you treat yourself, how you treat other people, and certainly how you respond to the challenges that you are presented with. And it makes it really hard to see that those are opportunities that are being brought forth. Opportunities where you can sift through your trauma, figure out where it all originated from, and then deal with it and make peace with it. So that therefore you can walk out into the world being your authentic self, instead of basically a walking suitcase of the traumatic events and everything that it taught you about yourself and your world. And when you have a lot of trauma you've not dealt with, you're seeing only really through the lens of that trauma. And that drives everything that you do, including how you carry yourself. So a catalyst like myself, I know a few of them through my work. There are not many of us, but we seem to find each other. And a catalyst is someone that a lot of times through a soul contract will bring up the things that people have been trying to long shove down and ignore. And it starts out with this really comfortable dynamic, but then we get into the actual work of what is to happen. And a lot of times a catalyst like myself won't even know that that's what's supposed to happen. Like my forward consciousness doesn't know until it's revealed. And then I go into oh shit mode and realize that that's exactly what it is. And then the information comes and I get a better understanding of what's up. And myself, especially being a channel, a lot of times I think that I'm just making conversation. I don't realize whether around a stranger or even someone that I know, even if I don't know them all that well, that what I'm saying is actually cutting to the heart of things that they're dealing with. I just think that I'm talking about shit I like to talk about, or that we're just having a conversation. And that's usually when, even if I'm trying to hide the fact that I'm intuitive, because I don't always want everyone to know, it has its caveats. That's when someone's eyes get wide, and that's when someone asks me, how did you know about that? And then I'm in the awkward position of having to explain that away and having to decide, do I dismiss it and essentially be dishonest about what I am, or and you know, be honest about what just happened here, or do I just say, so this is obviously coming up right now for your highest and best, and I'm an intuitive and this is how this works. So there are a lot of those instances where I've found that I just think that I've met someone or run into someone, and then I find out I have some kind of a soul contract and I'm supposed to help bring up the things because they've not been dealing with the things, which is usually very deep-seated, compacted, impacted trauma. And usually the folks that are led to me have gone through horrible life circumstances. It's not moderate trauma, it's really big things. So when you are a catalyst, there are things that you need to just accept and be prepared for. One of them is being subject to facing that traumatic interface, that trauma interface that the person is carrying and embodied with. Because when you drill far enough down, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to the heart of things that do not feel good and have been painful for them, it is only natural and completely understandable that their reaction is going to be that of survival, emotional survival especially, and they're going to usually react in a way that is very defensive or offensive or aggressive in some way. They may suddenly get really fucking pissed at you or ghost you, or, you know, just find a way to self-manage in the way that they've always done it, because they don't know how else to do that. And that leads to you dealing as the catalyst with these emotions that pertain to you having to accept the fact that this person has not accepted what's come up. And usually by then you're pretty well aware of what's going on, right? You kind of figured it out. Okay, so this is another soul contract. This is another person I'm supposed to be helping. This isn't going well. And that is where, as a catalyst, we have a few things to consider. One of them is how to react ourselves, because it's going to bring up feelings until you heal the aspects that they themselves are catalyzing in you. Because see, it is an exchange. You are not only handing them what they need to see so that they can have an opportunity to sift through it instead of being absolutely terrified and running or telling you what a pain in the ass you are. You're also being handed certain emotions that are to help you be the best catalyst that you can be. And that includes learning how to love in an unconditional way. And we got to talk about what love is and what it isn't. But also, you know, looking at the aspects in you that are unhealed, that this person or these people are bringing up for you to actually look at and deal with. Because I know as catalysts, we've been on a journey. We've dealt with a lot of our shit. We've learned a lot. We have quite a bit of wisdom, and we kind of feel battle hardened in a way. But we never want to get into a space of ego and thinking that we know it all, or that we have to tell this person how to do something or how to live, or to come from this place of controlling or domineering, trying to be domineering. You really want to stay humble and understand that you are basically the tool that Spirit is utilizing for this person to have an opportunity to get past painful things and to live a better, more peaceful, loving, joyful life, a happy life. But that does not mean that just because you have been asked to plant the seeds that you get to dictate how the plants grow. Does that make sense? That's spirit's job. But that does leave you with some things to accept and to sift through, including feelings of rejection, feelings of being too much or not enough, engaging in the belief that usually comes from childhood trauma that we ourselves have experienced that say you are unlovable, you're not acceptable as you are. And as catalysts, we will draw people to us like bees to flowers. So there will be a lot of people coming and going in your lifetime, and you just have to accept that, and that's really hard. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how they chose to handle that trigger. And if they've only known how to deal with something one way, which is usually to run or to try and shove it down, that's how they're first and foremost going to attempt to do this. And the seeds that you plant, you are not entitled to knowing with each and every one of them how the story turned out. A lot of folks are going to get some seeds from you. They're going to garner the lessons. They're going to go on in their life, and you're never going to see how that manifested. And we just have to know that that's okay. But then others will round back and actually share with you the changes that they've incurred and how much healthier and happier they are. Those whose seeds you are meant to see grow, whether it's during the process of them growing or later on down the road, how many years, you were meant to see those things come to fruition. If it doesn't happen with the others, then you could not be there. And that's okay. But when we talk about love, even just in a general sense, it would be really nice if we as a people in general learn that love is not controlling, it's not clingy, it's not coming with a list of demands. There are healthy boundaries, of course, but love is unconditional and understanding and compassionate, and love lets go. Love asks us to look inward at maybe how we're carrying things that might hinder us from acting in a way that really embodies what love is. And I think as humans in this global society, we label a lot of things love that have not ever been love and will never be love. Love is not jealous, and love is not spiteful. Love is not controlling or domineering. Love does not say, I will love you when you become this or when you achieve this. Love says, I love you right now for exactly where you're at. Love is absolutely compassionate. Love is not bitter. Love is not resentful. And as a catalyst, you are going to be the best catalyst that you can possibly be when you embrace that way of being and understanding that that's what love is, understanding that you can love someone to the nth degree and know that you're never going to speak to them again or see them again. But you can love them just as if nothing had ever happened. That's how you become the greatest catalyst that you can, just embodying your existence as a catalyst from a space of love and not fear, because fear is the only thing that leads us to control or domineer or to be bitter or resentful or angry. We have to strive always to do better than that. And it would be nice if humans in general embodied that sense of love and what love really is. And we have to really be compassionate with how people respond. And a lot of times you are not dealing with the person's response. You're dealing with the voice of the trauma and the pain that they've endured and the fear of being hurt. And it's so important that we feel safe, emotionally safe, especially in our relationships of any kind. And when someone encounters something uncomfortable that's coming up that touches on some very painful things for them, they probably don't feel safe. And they're going to engage in those behaviors that got them through the trauma that they've lived through, thinking that that's how they need to handle it because that's how they've always handled it, not realizing that dealing with it that way only allows things to continue to fester under the surface, and it keeps them stuck in the same patterns where, yeah, they would be uncomfortable for a bit, and it might be intensely uncomfortable for a bit, but then they'd work through those things and then have a happier, more balanced, joyful, life full of love, and they'd be able to meet their potential in all ways that they wanted to. They'd give themselves freedom by working with the seeds that you plant. But normally the first reaction to that is going to be engaging in those same old patterns. But if the seeds are planted, they will find that they don't work anymore, and that they have to come from a different space. And it might take years before it clicks. We don't get to dictate that. There is such a thing as free will. We all have choice. And I think that it's important for us as catalysts to also embody our free choice, our free will, to make a promise with ourselves to deal with the feelings that brings up in us when somebody goes into those patterns and maybe doesn't treat us as well for what they didn't expect to encounter. And I know that a lot of times you and I as a catalyst, we never expected that shit to happen. We just a lot of times do not know until it's kind of too late and you've established something with someone, a friendship or whatever it is. And by then we just have to do the best we can when it's revealed to us what the purpose is, and to work through our feelings and to know that they're just as much a catalyst for us. It is an exchange. It's not just one-sided. They're handing us stuff too. They're reflecting things to us as well. And we need to be humble and be the student in that moment. Being a catalyst is not easy. You can deal with all the different caveats, including stalkers, people that really want to monopolize your time and attention because they feel safe with you and comfortable with you. You will have a profound impact on the people that you connect with. And, with people walking around with a trauma interface and that being the foremost thing that interacts with the people in the world around them, that's initially what you're absolutely going to come up against in a lot of these different soul contracts. And it's going to hurt, and it's going to make you feel all kinds of ways that are not fun. And being a catalyst may make you feel like you are burdened, but we need to move out of that as well and understand that that is also our own trauma and our hurt coming up. So the important thing is, if you have been in a catalyzing soul contract where you were supposed to highlight something to someone, whether you meant to or not, take note of what they also gave you and work with that. Don't be in a space of ego to where we can tend to think that we know everything or that we don't have anything to work on. We're just the authority watching this person fuck up, because I hear a lot of that. And it's important that we love people for exactly where they're at, not for where they could be. And to understand that love is not, well, you need to do it this way. You're not reacting the way that I want to, so therefore I'm super bitter and angry with you, and all these things. That's us backsliding, if that makes sense, in our progress. So it's really important to be mindful of where we are coming from, because that is a responsibility as a catalyst that we have. And really assessing, are you coming more from a space of fear, where you feel spiteful because that person didn't react the way that we'd hoped, or you're pissed off because you got ghosted, or you're pissed off because that person didn't appreciate what you were trying to help them with when you realized you were supposed to help them. Just having some funky ass feelings about it, but really sticking with those feelings instead of looking at what they're telling you. If we come from a place of love, we say instead, okay, so this isn't the greatest situation right now. I feel A, B, C, D, E, and F. So I'm going to sit down and go to the origin of when all of that began for me in my life. I'm going to take it for the opportunity that it is, because I'm asking that the person do the same. So I'm going to require the same of myself, and then work through it and center your way back into this space of standing in, standing on a foundation of loving people just for where they're at, and understanding that people have gone through some really horrific things in life. And They just did what they could to survive. And if that is something that has served you in a traumatic situation, why would you want to let go of those coping mechanisms if it was the only thing that helped you get through? It just makes sense. It makes sense, and we have to have compassion for that. But know that if you were meant to plant seeds, it happened for a reason. Spirit's going to take care of the rest, and so is that person. But we don't get to dictate how that happens, and we can't be pissed off or making it all about us if they didn't react in a way that we expected or wanted, because it is their hurt and their fear and their pain lurching forward. And nobody really means to hurt anyone. But they do mean to protect themselves, especially if they've been through a lot. It's survival. So that's what I wanted to share. And as a catalyst, there are so many responsibilities, including how you view a situation, how you choose to respond. And I think it's also important that we start to understand our soul contract and why this is, what the bigger picture is. Because if you are helping people become catalyzed to a different space, then you're doing a really great service. You're offering something huge. And that should always be the focus, the other person's well-being. And you have every right to have boundaries and to want to be treated fairly. That doesn't always happen when you're a catalyst. But how you choose to respond or not respond, how you choose to engage with yourself in the situation is crucial. And we're not going to get it right. I mean, if we have been through trauma ourselves, we're going to have a trauma reaction as well until we sit down and realize, oh shit. Okay, so this is what this is showing me, and now I got to work on it. But I've made the commitment to always do that. And hopefully you will too, because that's what it's all about. People exchanging puzzle pieces. And just coming from a humble place and understanding that we're all just trying to get through this life, which can be very challenging. And it can be even more challenging when you're a catalyst and you really do get a front row seat to people's trauma and the survival mechanisms that they engaged in just to survive. So looking at the big picture will help, but also remembering, love is not clinging. Love is not negating another human being or dehumanizing them or seeing things in black and white. Love is letting go when you need to let go and just loving them regardless. Not for who they can become in working with the seeds that you planted, but for exactly who they are, where they are right now. And that definitely takes coming from a higher perspective. But it's very important if you're a catalyst. It's just the series of responsibilities that we have. And if we are operating in any other space that is on a lower level of the scale, then we are really dishonoring the gift that we have and what we can do in people's lives. And we're really limiting the impact that we can have on the people that, because we have a soul contract with them to love them in that way, like we are limiting and hindering really the love that we're supposed to give. So I know it's maybe not what some people want to hear. And it hasn't always been something that I've routinely done well with, but it is really important to come from a really loving space. And if you veer out of that because of your own trauma, which happens, you always want to work really, really hard to work your way back into that space so that you can offer the most that you can, because it's all about everyone's well-being and helping other souls cope with this thing called life in a better way. So I love you guys. We'll talk to you later.